What's up, runners? Long time no see. I have been cheating on you just a little bit with Destiny 2. But today, I do have marathon news for you. I got a couple of articles from the Game Post by Zuhad Ali that I think you guys are going to find pretty interesting. Now, these are updates for things that have come out since the closed alpha that was publicized. These are for the private tests. So some of this information is going to be, subject to change. It could be incorrect. But for as far as we know, these are the changes they've made, as well as some information on the runners that have been introduced. Glitch and the other runners that we had at the original streamed content are still in the game. They haven't had any significant changes according to this article, so I'm going to skip over those and tell you the new ones they've talked about. And then we're going to talk about the one that has the details on all the changes that have gone to gameplay in the meantime. These articles are going to be linked down in the description if you want to go ahead and take a look at them. I want to go ahead and put up some highlights on the screen for you as we go through these several steps here. Beginning with, we do have 3 new characters to go over. One of them is going to be Ox, who is kind of this support agent. They have skills that are good for team play, and some that will be good even solo, that are healing-based abilities or team support in some way. Now, they do have a bigger focus on team play than solo, but I think you will see the value in this regardless. Her prime ability is called Reboot Plus. This makes it so that you can revive a teammate from a distance or use an EMP to shut down other people's abilities. Her tactical ability is going to be Med Drone, which will let herself heal her or her teammates. Her passive is going to be Shareware.exe, which makes it so that whenever you use a consumable stim, like Cardio Kick or some of the others, you will give that benefit to your nearby teammates. That gives them a lot more value than I think they had originally. And then trait 2 is Battery Overcharge, which is an interesting one because this directly buffs Volt-based weapons, and it gives you like a unique melee attack, I guess. But buffing a weapon type as a passive seems like an interesting take on this, because none of the other characters really have that kind of passive effect. Their passives are more things that you can do regardless of weapon, not boosting a specific weapon. But I do like that. Now, I do find his skill set pretty interesting, right? The ultimate will work in a team or without a team. There's the offensive capability and a defensive capability. The Med Drone will save you money on stims in the long run. If you do run out in a match or something, or med packs, you'll be able to still heal pretty consistently without having to really dump money into that. Shareware gives more value to stims, so that the space you're saving on medkits and healing items, maybe you can put that into some of these stims and do them for your whole team instead of just for you. That's kind of, it's useful. It is a unique way of using them. It's not a make or break, I think, for a lot of them. If you're not going to be using the stims, then it feels kind of weird to take it, personally. Finally, the Volt weapon thing, like I said, I think it's a really cool take, really interesting. Want to see what they do because Volt weapons were already pretty good, so we'll only have to wait and see how strong this makes them. Next up, we have Thief, and Thief is no longer Thief, she is now Icon. This is that original concept of a stealthy loot stealer kind of character. So her abilities do reinforce that, and even if she's not that strong, I think she'll seem pretty fun to you, and I might main her just because it seems pretty funny and pretty goofy. For her ultimate, she's going to have Pickpocket Drone, which she can send out to go after an enemy. It will loot the highest value item they have, and then bring it back to you and drop it on the floor so you can pick it up. Now, the article does say that it can detect invisible runners, so it should be able to detect Void. Not totally sure how that's going to work. I don't know what the targeting looks like for it, right? But being able to pickpocket something seems really fun. Using it as your ultimate and it having to go out there and maybe possibly revealing your position, I'm not going to say it's amazing or very, very powerful compared to the other ultimates on this list, but it's really funny, and I can't deny that. Her tactical ability is a grappling hook, and this has been described as similar to Pathfinder's grapple from Apex Legends. So you can grapple something and use your momentum to swing or pull yourself straight up and get the high ground. So actually a very versatile kind of tool. This will let you take the high ground or horizontally move. You can probably carry that momentum with some good jump timing. So depending on what the cooldown and charges look like, you might be able to swing kind of like Spider-Man, or it might just be a short burst of speed as long as you've got some terrain to use. Now, she does have 2 passives. Unfortunately, one of them doesn't really have a description to it. It's just called The Finer Things, and there is no description attached to that. We're just going to briefly mention it, and then we can speculate on what that does. but I could honestly not give you an idea right now. But underneath trait 1, we have X-ray visor, which lets her see through walls to see what the highest rarity item is in a container. As well as every now and then it will ping enemies, which kind of puts her into conflict for Blackbird's position on the team. They're both going to have kind of wall hacks. This is passive wall hacks versus Blackbird's active wall hacks. So I don't know. The kit of Blackbird's probably stronger than this, but this is more of a fun kit, I think, for being a little loot goblin and sneaking around. So it's pretty synergistic, I would say. Finally, for our new runners, we have Rook, who is going to be kind of this special character. I would most say he's comparable to a Scav in Tarkov. He has less abilities than the other characters. He has a random kit. He is only solo, and he spawns in halfway through the game. So you are not going to be able to queue up with your friends. You're not going to be playing from the top of the lobby. You're going to be looking for scraps. It is a scavenger kind of playstyle, and he can only spawn into the actual planet maps, so Perimeter, Dire Marsh, and Outposts. He cannot load onto the Marathon ship. His 2 abilities are as follows. Recuperation is his ultimate, which will heal him over time, and IFF Override is his tactical, which will disguise him as a bot, which will probably make it so the bots don't shoot at you, kind of like how scavs don't shoot you as a scav in Tarkov, but this will be more of a timed experience. Maybe you'll get ignored by other runners if you look like a bot, depending on the person, right? So I think that's a really interesting set of characters. So we have the 6 main runners, right? Glitch, Void, Blackbird, and Locust, as well as our new ones, Ox and Icon. And then there is Rook, who stands out as basically a scav who can let you spam games, maybe learn some maps and things like that. So it could be a very useful kind of character to have, and I really do like that being in the game. Of those 3 characters, who do you like the most? What's your take on those 3? And I'm going to count Rook in that, even though he's not a full character, just because it enables different kind of gameplay. Now we're going to move on to our second article from Zuhad. This is focused more on the overall changes to the gameplay since the alpha. I'm going to go ahead and just pull out some highlights for you. Nothing here is really game changing, I would say, but they are interesting tweaks and things that I think we should bring up. There are some things in here that I'm not going to very go into detail to, because they're things like the UI got better and the audio is better, which is kind of what you expect going from alpha to a 1.0 release. So I don't want to like dwell on them. But starting us off, proximity chat is confirmed to be operational in the game. It is currently functioning on these tests, and I think that was the thing that the game was missing the most. Those moment-to-moment interactions with each other, that emergent gameplay as you interact with other teams. So I'm very happy to see that that is working and that it's actively being worked on. And I hope by the time this comes out, it is very stable and in a place where if you need to report people, you can report just generally the audio for the last couple of seconds maybe, and that might get you the kind of system that you need to manage this kind of open voice channel. Time to kill is now much faster, apparently. It says it is considerably faster, so as far as I'm concerned, that should make playing solos a bit easier, playing duos a bit easier, but also a little bit more scary to get jumped, right? You have less chances of running away from a fight if you get engaged first. So this makes it so that planning and preparation is a little bit more important than the raw aim. And in that case, I think that it's going to be more accessible to more people, because you don't need to practice your aim as much, but you can practice being sneaky, getting the drop on people, picking your fights correctly. And those skills, that kind of thinking, is what you want in an extraction shooter. So it makes extraction shooters accessible. So with that, I think average players are going to see a large increase in how they feel about the game, and they're going to feel a lot better about it. And for good players, you might not feel as rewarded for your aim, but even then, if you are a higher skill player, then you're going to start feeling capable of doing things like the 1v2 and the 1v3 more consistently, which might be more exciting to you anyways. Next up, we have healing items. Health healing items specifically are apparently heal over time now. Shields are still instant. I don't know exactly how to feel about this. I could take it or leave it. I think if it gets rid of the long animation to pop the heal, you just very quickly do the stim injection, and then you have a passive heal after that, and maybe you can stack them up in Q 2 or 3 for your bar, and then you take damage, and it just reduces how much you're going to heal overall. I would be totally cool with that. I think that's a more stable system. But if it is still like 5 seconds to pop that, and then it takes like 6 seconds more to heal your health, I don't know, that feels like really, really long, really, really punishing. So I can take it or leave it depending on how the rest of the systems change around it. There is also a new environmental effect, that is basically the opposite of rain. It will increase the amount of heat that you build up instead of decreasing, and it does do damage over time, which I don't know how I feel about like an environmental effect doing damage over time unless it's confined to an area, like the poison gas maybe. Or you can make that into a kind of ability thing, right? Like someone's ability could be a grenade that releases this kind of effect, and that would be pretty interesting. But just increasing your heat buildup is a cool effect and does change up how you play on maps during certain conditions. For anybody who's into the immersion effect, they are going to let bodies remain on the floor for a longer duration now. So when you die, instead of instantly disintegrating and turning into a box, you will have your body be there for at least some period of time. And as well, while you're crawling away, there should now be blue blood, which I think makes the game just a little bit more immersive, a little bit more gritty to play. There is a new codex system, which is something like Triumphs in Destiny, which are just challenges you do and then you take them off. And this might play into the new system they have of titles as well, where whenever you do whatever it wants you to do, you can get a title and it will just say it underneath your name. And most MMOs, it's kind of a thing. Destiny does that. So if you've seen that anywhere else, it's going to be the same kind of idea here. There is also apparently a shooting range in the works. Cool. I don't know how much we're going to get use out of it. Like if we're going to get damage numbers and things like that, that'd be pretty cool. If we could test all the weapons without having to buy them, that'd be pretty cool. But we're going to have to wait and see how that shakes up. We do also have news on the UESC Marathon map, which is the ship map in orbit. We do know that there are going to be apparently multiple areas that you can take in the ship. It is not going to be just one map with the whole ship, but several large maps inside the interior of the ship. It is a very large moon-sized ship, right? So that's what they're kind of going for with this. The article talks about a map called Cryo Archive. That is what they're based in. They do not have like a full list of all the things that might be coming out or planned for later, but this should probably be what's in the game when it comes to 1.0. On this map, and we can assume for all maps on the Marathon, there is a higher chance for high tier loot to spawn, but for that, you face a permadeath scenario. You can get down but not out at it and revived as many times as you want, but if you die, if you go into box state and you die, you are apparently out of the game. That's it. So that is a little bit more hardcore, more like Tarkov than anything else. So that is pretty challenging. And on top of that, instead of extractions being assigned to you when you spawn in and you can go over there and take them, you have to make it to the middle of the map where there is a control room, activate an extract which will randomly spawn around the map, and then you have to make your way to that extract. So not only do you have to make it to the center, but you have to make it from the center to the extract. That is multiple points where you would have to potentially get into fights with people, especially if everybody has to go to the center to activate this. You only have 3 minutes to make it to your extract in that time frame, and assumedly you can go back to the center and spawn a new one up to the match timer. That is pretty cool. I like this kind of end game setup type of map. It brings you back to labs in Tarkov, which is a bit more hardcore, a bit more aggressive on you, but it is interesting for you've been playing in the easier maps and you want a challenge, or for some end game quests, just really late to make you lose money and make it so that you have something to spend money on. Finally, our last note, there is no solo queue in the game at this time. They are not talking about a solo queue in the game at this time. I think with the time to kill changes and the healing changes, it's more likely that being a solo into duos and trios isn't as bad. It feels like a lot of the high time to kill issue is you can take out one guy, maybe even two, but by the time the third guy comes around, no matter how good you're doing, it takes so long to kill them that you have taken enough damage that you will never beat their time to kill without some serious kind of crazy outplay. So the time to kill changes might address that so that playing solo is not nearly as bad. However, I would like at least a duo mode, I think would be fair. Solos into duos is much easier than solo into trios. And this would make it so that you are still incentivized to play in duos, and it will make sure you're not having an easier time playing solos into solos just all the time. There is always that chance that you're going up against a duo, which just makes it a little bit more dramatic, and it also makes it so that playing duos, you can play 2s versus 2s with some solos mixed in, and that's just a little bit less intense than full-on 3v3s. You can keep 3v3s to its own mode, where people are fully committing to playing in a trio or playing against trios in whatever manner they so choose. But I would really like to see at least one alternate queue method. It doesn't have to be solo, it doesn't have to be duo, but at least one of those I think would be interesting. And that is our roundup for these game post articles. I am very happy to see news and more information coming out from these closed tests. So I'm keeping an eye out for any information that comes out that seems reputable as well as interesting, and I'm going to keep you updated on those. I am still waiting for this public beta announcement. I think a lot of these changes are what we want to see for a public beta, And when that comes out, I would like more people to get to play this, experience it, and then pitch more ideas and more balancing things, because that's what this kind of game needs, right? It needs some testing, it needs some live world, thousands of people playing, figuring out what does and doesn't work, so we can smooth out the edges in this experience. So, what do you guys think? Are these improvements good for you, or are there things that you think are steps backwards? Is this what Bungie needs to be doing? I really like to know what you guys are thinking about this. I think these are some, really great and interesting changes. I'm a big fan of pretty much all of these, apart from there not being like a solo queue active. But that is enough for me today. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you all again very, very soon.